My name is Sarah, and I was 26 when this happened, working in sales and traveling constantly. In late July of 2025, I flew from Chicago O'Hare to San Francisco for a conference. I'm one of those people who refuses to pay for the pricey parking garages, so I left my car, a newer black Audi Q5, in one of the cheaper long-term surface lots. You know the one. It's always packed, poorly lit, and takes an annoying shuttle ride to get to the terminal. But hey, I was saving $40 a day. When I got back 5 days later, the O'Hare parking lot was just as miserable as I'd left it. It was 11 p.m., pitch black, and raining. I was tired, smelled faintly of stale airplane air, and just wanted to be home. The shuttle dropped me off, and I found my Q5 tucked away in a shadowy corner of the lot. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I threw my carry-on into the back, slid into the driver's seat, and pulled out. I was maybe 10 minutes into the drive home, doing a solid 75 down I-294, when my phone, which was connected to my car's CarPlay, lit up with an alert I'd never seen before. AIRTAG found moving with you. A cold wave of dread hit me instantly, far worse than any fatigue. I pulled over to the shoulder of the highway, my hazards flashing in the rain, and tapped the screen. The Find My app opened, showing a map. A red dashed line trailed from the airport lot, showing the AIRTAG had been tracking me the entire time. The alert said it had been moving with me for over 5 days. 5 days. That meant it had been planted before I even left, or maybe right after I parked. They knew my car was gone, and now they knew where I was going. My mind started racing, trying to process the information. The goal wasn't just to track the car while I was gone. The goal was clearly to track me after I got back. This wasn't a random item theft. This was stalking or a precursor to a targeted theft where they wanted to know when I was home, and more importantly, when I wasn't. For the next 3 days, I couldn't relax. I was constantly checking my rearview mirror, jumping at shadows. I was convinced that since they knew my car was an Audi Q5 and they tracked it for 5 days, they must have already copied my key fob signal or gotten a key cut using the VIN number, which is a surprisingly easy crime. I finally returned home on Sunday, but I parked 3 blocks away and took an Uber for the last part. I walked into my apartment building, and everything looked normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The next morning, I drove the 3 blocks back to my car, got in, and drove to work. When I got to my office building, I got another alert. AIRTAG found moving with you. My blood ran cold. I immediately pulled over. There was no way. I had destroyed the first one. I searched the entire car again, frantically. I took apart the glove box. I checked the entire center console. Nothing. Then, I remembered something I'd read. Sometimes they put them inside the tail light assembly. I drove to a friend's garage. We took apart the back bumper and looked inside the housing for the brake light. Taped securely to the interior plastic of the tail light casing was a second AIRTAG. 2 of them. They hadn't just used one, they had a backup, a contingency plan. The first one was to track the person, the second was to track the car if the person found the first. They had been in my car twice, maybe even 3 times, once to plant the first, once to plant the second, and possibly to check on the first one during the 5 days I was gone. The sheer audacity, the premeditation, the feeling of being a piece of property marked for theft, but also a person marked for observing, it was debilitating. I immediately traded in my car, moved apartments within the month, and still feel a sick, heavy terror whenever I get a notification. Even one from an app one trust on. My name is Mark. I was 28 and living in downtown Portland. This was back when I was really trying to get back into the dating scene after a rough breakup. Like most people my age, I was on the apps, Tinder, Bumble, the whole chaotic mess. I matched with this girl, Chloe. She was stunning, a landscape architect, seemed smart, and had this cool, slightly reserved vibe. We talked for a week, and then set up a date for a Friday evening at a popular craft brewery. It was loud, lively, and public, which I always prefer for a first date. The date was fine, honestly. A little too perfect, maybe. She was overly attentive, asking specific, probing questions about my work schedule, my neighborhood, and where I usually went to the gym. She even laughed a little too hard at my dumb jokes. It felt like she was performing a date, rather than experiencing one. We left the brewery around 9:30 p.m. I walked her back to her car, a white sedan, parked about a block away in an alley lot. As we were saying goodbye, she pulled me into a quick hug, a surprisingly tight embrace for a first date. I remember thinking it was kind of sweet, if a little eager. Then she was gone, and I walked the 3 blocks back to my apartment. I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone, thinking maybe I'd text her the next day, when the notification popped up. It was about 11:30 p.m. AIRTAG found moving with you. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was already late, and I was alone in my apartment. I instantly opened the Find My app. The map showed the AIRTAG had been with me since 9:35 p.m., right when she hugged me in that alley. The map showed a solid red line tracing my walk back from the brewery to my apartment. It was here, in my apartment, right now, that I went into a cold panic. I tried the play sound feature. I heard a faint, quick chirp. It seemed to be coming from the living room. I slowly walked out, tiptoeing like I was walking on eggshells. I played the sound again, louder this time, coming from my coat closet. I reached in and felt around the pockets of the... I realized where it was. When she hugged me, she was surprisingly low, like she was trying to reach something in my lower back area. I grabbed the backpack I'd carried that night. I only used it to hold my keys and wallet, and it had been slung over my shoulder during the hug. I dug deep into the main compartment. Tucked all the way down in the lining, where the seams meet the bottom, was a small white disc. The AIRTAG. She had slipped it into my bag during that too tight hug. It was so fast, so precise, I hadn't even felt it. I immediately ripped the battery out, crushing the disc under my heel for good measure. I then did what I should have done first. I called the police and reported the stalking. The police were frustratingly slow. They took the AIRTAG and a report, but they stressed that with no forced entry and no direct threat, their hands were tied without a deeper investigation. They ran the serial number. 2 days later, a detective called me. The AIRTAG was registered to a burner Apple ID, but the detective's off-the-record advice was grim. Don't ignore this, Mark. Someone wants to know your routine. I blocked Chloe on every app, but that wasn't the end. The worst part about AIRTAG stalking isn't the tracking. It's the information it gives them before you find it. She knew where I lived, my exact route home, and my work schedule because of the questions she'd asked. 2 weeks later, I was walking out of my gym, the one I told her about on the date, when I saw her. She was across the street, sitting in that white sedan. She wasn't hiding. She just looked at me. Her expression wasn't angry or remorseful. It was just a flat, unsettling smile. She held up her phone and took a quick picture of me. Then, she drove off slowly. I called the police again. This time I had a car, a license plate, which turned out to be fake, and a location. The police said they'd drive by. They never found her. When I got home, the AIRTAG was still pinging, showing the red line tracking my route. I put the car in the gear. Expression wasn't angry or remorseful. It was just a flat, unsettling smile. She held up her phone and took a quick picture of me. Then, she drove off slowly. I called the police again. This time I had a car, a license plate, which turned out to be fake, and a location. The police said they'd drive by. They never found her. The next week, it escalated. I walked out of my apartment building and found a small, unmarked box taped to my driver's side window. Inside was a single, perfect white rose. Attached to the stem was a small, laminated note with only 3 words written in sharp, clean handwriting. I know your heart. I moved out of that apartment within a week. I still check every bag, every pocket, every seam before I leave a new location. I deleted all the dating apps. The memory of that perfectly curated date, followed by the chilling realization that a stranger had used a $29 piece of tech to map out my entire life, is something I can't shake. That fake smile, the tight hug, the white rose, it wasn't a romance. It was a surgical invasion. The gas tank trap. This happened to me last year, in a quiet suburb of Dallas. My name is Jessica, and I'm 32. I drive a slightly older Jeep Wrangler, a bit of a gas guzzler, so I'm at the same gas station every 3 or 4 days. This particular day, a Tuesday in mid-October, I was running late for work. I stopped at the corner station, paid at the pump, filled up, and rushed off. I was maybe halfway to the office when the notification came. I'd seen the news stories, so I knew what it meant immediately. AIRTAG found moving with you. The sickness hit me hard. I did exactly what everyone says not to do. I drove home. I didn't want to lead the tracker to my office, where I'd be stuck for 8 hours. My house was a quick 10-minute drive, and I figured I could tear the car apart in my own driveway in private. For the next few weeks, I felt a paralyzing hypervigilance. I changed my route to work, switched gas stations, and even started parking my Jeep in my neighbor's driveway sometimes, hoping to throw off any casual surveillance. Then, things got deeply, personally disturbing. One night, I came home, and something was wrong. My front door was locked, the garage was closed, everything was secure. But when I went into the kitchen, a single, antique silver spoon was sitting on my center island. It was one of the 12 spoons from my grandmother's old set. I keep that set in a locked box in my bedroom dresser. I was certain it had been safely put away. My blood ran cold. I immediately checked the dresser. The lock was untouched. I opened the box. The silver set was complete. But it was the wrong spoon. I pulled out the spoon from the island. It was exactly like my grandmother's, but it was not from her set. I ran my finger over the handle. The engraved initials were slightly different. A few days later, I found a small, smooth river stone on my bathroom counter, sitting right next to my toothbrush. I don't live near a river, and I don't collect rocks. I would have noticed it before. Then, the final, terrifying straw. I woke up one Saturday morning, and there was a child's drawing stuck to my bedroom ceiling, directly over my bed. It was a crude stick figure drawing of a woman sleeping, and the stick figure was labeled J. The paper was stuck with a piece of putty. I had been asleep, and someone had been in my room. Directly above my head, I checked the house. No forced entry. How was someone getting into a securely locked house to leave these bizarre, unnerving calling cards? The police came back, now taking the case seriously. They pointed out that the lock to my back sliding door was old and cheap. They theorized that the AIRTAG was a distraction, a way to terrorize me while they figured out my key situation, or that the small, weird objects were meant to establish dominance and access. The silver spoon was a test. The rock was a confirmation. The drawing was the ultimate violation. The stalker had established they could get in, they could watch me, and they could leave a sign that only I would understand. Make sure click the like, share, and subscribe for more videos. I moved out that afternoon. The thought that someone I never saw, a ghost who was only visible on a digital map, had been in my bedroom while I slept, is a feeling that will never leave me. I still don't know who it was. The police suspect it was a petty thief who got a thrill from the psychological game, but to me, he was a monster. I had been a blip on a screen, and that AIRTAG had made me a target for intimate personal terror.